Hey, so what's up? This is Neil from mypaintgirls.com, and I'm gonna be drawing Venom. Venom. That was kind of retarded. All right, let's get going. So the first thing I do, as always, I begin like a sketch thingy, and I didn't like the way it came out at all. And you know what happened was, usually when I don't like the way like the first sketch comes out, it's because I didn't start with the most primitive shapes, just like throw down like almost like a silhouette with the shapes. Instead, I'm just gonna try to draw it right from my brain, and I'm gonna just try to start putting some details and stuff in there. And then I'm like, oh, that didn't come out right at all. Then I had to adjust it, and I still didn't like it, so I had to start all over. And I freaking put pause on the thing, and I forgot to unpause it when I started drawing again. I do it again later on with the colors. I fill in the flats, and then I paused the video for some reason to go do something, and then I totally forgot to unpause it, and I had painted, colored him all in and stuff. I'm like, oh well. But you've seen me color things before, so it's no different. I didn't color him any differently than I've colored other stuff before. I ended up using a two light system, the blue on the right and just kind of like purple or fuchsia on the left. Our left, his right, or excuse me, our left, our right. So anyway, yeah. So when you do that, and then I'm like, maybe his leg needs to be smaller. I'm like, oh no, dude, that's not right. I guess I wanted it like higher or something. I don't know. I ended up erasing it and tried it again, and then I realized his chest needs to be larger and stuff. But bring that in more. Overall, though, this is kind of what I wanted, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. You'll see in just a second more of what I wanted, because I end up resketching it, but you don't get to see the process, unfortunately. But you'll get to see the new sketch come about. I actually had two different versions, one that was shorter, one that was wider. But this is pretty cool. It's not bad or anything. It's just not quite what I had in mind. So I recommend really to start. Yeah, that went so fast you didn't even get to see the other version of this, which was slightly narrower. But anyway, so I recommend really when you sketch out something to try to sketch it out with very, very primitive shapes and do it very quickly, just to get the general idea of proportions and stuff. And only after that looks right, then begin to go and start adding some detail to your sketch. You can literally do a primitive sketch, like just like the gesture part in like under 2 minutes, no problem. I mean, with adjustments and everything usually. Usually won't take you very long, but once you have that down, then you can easily go and start adding some details and stuff. Now I start inking. And I think the sketching process is the funnest. Inking is okay. Inking is kind of mindless and doesn't take a whole lot of thought. But it can kind of get kind of boring. It's definitely not as boring as flatting. Flatting is when you have to fill in all the basic colors for all the parts of the drawing. That's the most boring part, I think. But my favorite part is the sketching process, just coming up with the cool concepts and stuff. The pose and working all that out. It's pretty fun. So I decided to get really detailed with his, his body and stuff, and so I just went really detailed with the inks on this one. I was kind of going more for a Marvel type look, where they do a lot of darks, a lot of shadows and stuff with the inking. And yeah, so a lot of little details here and there. I think his head is a little bit too big, so I make it a little bit smaller. And inking with Photoshop is kind of difficult. I recommend to work at a high resolution. That way you can bring the resolution down so your inks will look a lot better. You work at a higher resolution than what you're going to be presenting it as. Typically it's like twice as large as how you're going to be presenting it. So if you're going to be presenting it online, 2 or 3 times as large as how large you'll be working. That way you reduce the size to fit online. Or even for print, you want to make it like twice as large. So draw twice as large as the size you're going to be printing at, and it usually just makes your artwork come out a lot better. Yeah, sometimes that using the inks, to do some of the darkest darks really does look kind of cool. You're not doing all the shading with it, just the darkest of the darks, and it's kind of neat looking. And I decided to kind of do that, not cross hatching, but where almost like you're trying to define actual muscles. Like without skin, with the little lines and the muscles. I thought it looked kind of cool, and I remember Marvel doing stuff like that. And then I do a little bit of cross hatching here and there, just a lot of little details and fake muscles that shouldn't actually be there, but the main muscle groups are there. But then I just add some fake ones just to make it look cooler. And besides, he's like an alien, so I can get away with it. You can get away with it with a human too. It's no big deal. I mean, comic book artists do it all the time. They make sure the main muscle groups are there, but then sometimes exaggerating it by adding extra, muscles here and there that aren't supposed to be there, or that just don't exist, in nature. Inking is pretty time consuming. It really is. That's why I try to spend as least amount of time on my sketching process as possible, because I know a big chunk of my time is going to be caught up in inking. And that's where you can add all the little details and stuff, rather than do it in your sketching process. Just do it in your inking process. The other process that takes a lot of time is coloring. So yeah, I was going here for like he's grabbing onto the side of a building, and he's scratching up it still, but he has also scratched up it, so it's kind of telling a little bit of a story there. You kind of have to imagine, why is he scratching the side of the building to hold on to it? What is he kind of angry about? And then he's kind of in a position like he might attack or something with his other hand, and who is he looking at off in the distance? Maybe it's Spider-Man or something. And so that's a little bit of storytelling there, and I thought I'd do a little bit of a background in this one, throw some buildings back there. And I end up actually making them look better toward the end, adding some textures and stuff like that. It's a really quick technique to get nice sharp edges, is to mask off with not the lasso tool, but the other tool that's kind of like the lasso tool that does the hard edges. And that tool can really come in handy when you want to add just color in a certain part of a background, and you can use it for all kinds of cool stuff. But it really particularly comes in handy for hard edges that you want to obtain, and like that. Then you just color. It also makes it easier just to color inside that shape, and then you get that nice crisp edge. Sometimes the edge will be too crisp, but usually for for comic books it's not a big deal. So I do all this, and then I go to start coloring him, and that's when I had it on pause, and I was like, oh dang it, I lost all that. I didn't feel like coloring him all over again, so. But it's the same process I do all the time for my comics, so. And boom, see, so I skipped all that part out on accident. I didn't actually skip it out, I actually forgot to unpause it. Then I do his little spider thing. It's kind of neat how I do the spider thing. I color it all white, and then after it's all colored in white, I put the black lines over on a separate layer, and then I select that layer, this white layer, the spider layer, and I add a little bit of color to it from the background, and then fade it into his body with a really dark black color, so it's fading around the edge of his body. And then after I do that, I take that selection of his spider, and then copy the line layer, and then duplicate that on top of the spider. That way the details are there. And then I turn the opacity down just a little bit. I totally screwed that up, so I have to do it again. I put too many legs in there. It's supposed to be 4 on each side. Anyway, so then after when you turn the opacity down just a little bit to like 90%, then it almost looks like I shaded it, but I didn't. It's just picking up the shading underneath. But yeah, so it's just about done. It ends up looking pretty cool, the end result, and I'll be posting the end result on my gallery, so you can click the link and go check it out, the final drawing. Thank you for watching. Click the thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Appreciate it.